Hi folks, it's Carol and Brian Carpenter here from Rainbow Aviation. As most of you know, we teach the Repairman Maintenance courses as well as Repairman Inspection courses for light sport. And we're here today talking about MOSAIC. This is our second video. We plan to do a series of at least 3, and probably we'll do some more during the course of the next year as we get new information for you. But today's topic is going to be on the amateur-built aircraft. Yesterday's was on the Repairman Maintenance course and the changes to that. The MOSAIC, which is the new proposed rule that has just come out, it is simply a draft, and based on our comments, it can change. So we really want to encourage you guys to watch all of the 3 videos that we'll have on topics, issues that we're concerned about, that we think the FAA might hopefully will address and maybe just change a few aspects. The rest of the rule looks pretty cool. But,
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. But there's just some aspects that we're super concerned about, and I mean major concern. And we'd really like to see a lot of comments and a lot of you guys to take the time to do that. There's instructions at the end of this video as well as on our website, rainbowaviation.com.
This actually is going to be a fun one because there's nothing to bitch about. This part this didn't show up in the rule.
It was disappointing though. It was disappointing it didn't show up because we were kind of hoping, even though we got some inklings during the silent period.
Yeah, on this next slide, this is about, I want you to talk about that conversation you had with the folks from Washington, D.C. That was, who was that?
Well, I got a phone call. It's been many years ago. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, because it was during the proposal to write MOSAIC, so I'm certain that they were discussing it at the time. But a team of inspectors from the FAA safety team in Washington called, and they were talking to me about the possibility of forcing folks with amateur-built planes that fit the light sport category to take our 2-day inspection course. And they said, but we don't think EAA will let us. And I said, well, don't frame it that way. Just offer the course, and the guys with the amateur-built planes will voluntarily come. And that was an interesting concept to them because they were looking at safety. They were looking at the safety records, and they were looking at accidents, and these guys can buy a plane. They didn't have anything to do with the build. They're buying an amateur-built plane. They're the second owner. And the accident rates are significant, you know,
yeah,
significant enough that they were calling.
Yeah, and it's always been that way, you know, that a lot of those accidents, if we simply had a little bit more maintenance training, we could really intervene and improve those whole things. But,
absolutely.
But it was interesting that they thought that it was, in order to get them to do that, in order to improve safety, that they would have to force them to do that.
And it was also interesting that the suggestion originated with the FAA.
Yeah, and so this isn't our idea. This originated from the FAA in the first place. But there's no need to force them to do this. And let's go back to my proposal here that I've got on the screen, and you can kind of talk about what we're suggesting. Yeah,
we're just suggesting that, you know, the people that have a light sport aircraft that fits the definition of the original definition of light sport can take a 2-day course.
An amateur-built airplane.
But I'm talking about the light sport. So the people that have a light sport aircraft could take a 2-day course.
Yes.
They can get a certificate to do their own inspection, and we're proposing that the amateur-built aircraft owners be able to do the same thing.
Got it.
Because they, especially if it fits into the definition of the light sport, I'll have a person call me and they'll say, you know what, I have a GT 500 and I want to take that class, and can I take your 2-day class and do your inspection? And I have to say, I don't know. I will actually have to look up the N number. Same make, model, it could be built in the same year, and one person can take the class and one cannot. No difference. And so I've always thought that it would be nice to have, and I think we should allow a person who has an amateur-built plane to take that 2-day inspection course.
Yeah, and so we think that if we are allowed to do this, what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a significant impact on safety. We're going to increase the number of affordable aircraft that can be flown and that are existing out there, but it's just too hard to find somebody to do the annual inspection on, so they've kind of given up. And all of the cost burdens on the owners, we're going to be able to reduce some of that stuff that's on there. And so Right now, if you own an amateur-built airplane and you're not the builder, what's your options?
Well, you would, if you're not the builder, you're going to have to get an A&P. The original builder can get a repairman certificate to do the inspection. Very rarely will they follow the plane and do that inspection for the second owner.
So what's the second owner got for options?
An A&P.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, there isn't any other options.
The original builder can file based on the build to get a repairman certificate, but there's one repairman certificate for the life of the plane. And
so I bought a little Quicksilver GT400 with a Rotax 503 two-stroke. It's certified as an experimental amateur built, and I'm going to now go try and find an A&P that has any two-stroke Rotax experience.
Or that's willing to look at it, or interested, because you know, it's not their world.
That's exactly right. And so it's kind of interesting because over the years, you know, I've had a lot of customers that wanted me to work on their amateur-built airplanes and to do the condition inspection on those airplanes. And we've got a long history with EAA. You know, we were founders of Chapter 1148 in Corning, California. Been a tech counselor and a flight advisor for you know, 20 plus years, and built 36 airplanes now, and had lots of customers that I worked with that I did their condition inspections. But it's kind of interesting because what happened to our insurance rates when we said we wanted to do condition inspections on experimentals?
It went up. We had to pay more if we were going to do experimental inspections and not just standard category inspections.
But here was always my issue. Who can work on an experimental airplane?
Oh yeah, well anybody can do the repairs, the maintenance, the service, the modifications on an experimental aircraft. Anyone watching this video and your grandmother could do it because there are no regulations. So I've got on the screen, I've got a picture of one of the Lancer. I built 3 Lancer 4Ps now. And one of these airplanes that's right here, this one has a TSIO 550 B1B twin-turboed intercooled 350 horsepower fire-breathing engine in the front of this thing. And everybody that's watching this video right now, 100% of you are legal to go out to that airplane on the ramp, pull the engine out of the airplane, put it on the workbench, tear it down, do a complete overhaul, bolt it back into the airplane, get the logbook out and sign off that you've done that, write out an invoice and charge for your services. Every single person watching this video can do that right now. Now that is pretty amazing what we can do with an experimental amateur built airplane. But all we're proposing here is that same group of people that can do all of that kind of stuff, why don't we want them to be able to do their own annual condition inspection on those airplanes? And so the issues that I've always had is if I've got somebody that I don't know and he wants to bring his airplane in so I can do the annual inspection on the thing, I know that him and all his dipstick buddies have been working on that thing, and they want me now to be part of the liability of signing off that airplane. And the minute it leaves the shop, even if I've got it running perfect, they're going to start dinking with the thing, and now I have to be in the mix for liability with that airplane forever and ever and ever, and I don't want to do that. So the customers that I had that I was signing off amateur built condition inspections for, we have to kind of become a team, and we have to decide that, okay, if we're going to do this, I'm going to be carrying on some of this liability, and I'm going to try and keep you alive, and you want me to try and keep you alive, and so we got to work together on this thing. And the rules are, if you're going to bring it into our shop, is that if you're going to have me signing off the annual every single year, saying that this airplane is in condition for safe operation, I don't want you dinking with the airplane in between. If you're going to do anything, you come down, you see me, we talk about it, and we do that kind of work together, and I make sure whatever you are doing on that airplane is going to meet with my approval, because you're asking me to take all the responsibility at the end of the year. When I've got really good customers that I can trust, that works out pretty well. But just Joe Schmo from off of the street, I'm not even going to consider doing that. And many A&P IAs out there, they don't want to get involved with that either. It's not a good business plan to be putting yourself out there, taking responsibility for all of this other work that these guys are doing. So I don't really kind of like that whole idea, but this concept during the light sport rule, where we now allowed the owners of these airplanes, did they even build those airplanes? No, a lot of them did not. Some of them could have. So you could still build it and then certify it as experimental light sport and get the repairman certificate based on the class. Or you could build it and put it into an amateur built category in some cases if the plane met the definition of, some of them would fit in 3 or 4 different categories, and the owner would decide where they're going to certify that plane. But once it's certified, then that's in stone. So the next owner can't decide to move it back.
So even though these guys had no experience building that airplane, they could get a repairman certificate to do the annual condition inspection. And I love this because it's an experimental airplane, anyone can do the work on the thing. So they're already doing the maintenance on the thing, but now we get to tie in this correlation of the responsibility for signing that off, and that all the work that's been done on that all year long is now in condition for safe operation. And you put that responsibility right on the guy doing the work, and you put it right on the guy that's signing that thing off. It's a beautiful balance on the thing. And I love the fact that these guys can take an ELSA airplane and now take total responsibility for ensuring that that thing is safe.
Exactly.
Why do we want to put that off on an A&P that doesn't really have much involvement with your airplane, but we're required to do that every single year? We got to send it to somebody to bless the airplane, and then the second it comes out of the shop, even if it's perfect, they can do anything they want to the thing. That doesn't make sense. What makes sense is to let the person that's got his butt in the airplane and that is responsible for the maintenance also responsible for the annual inspection to ensure that airplane is in good condition. I think it would make a tremendous difference in safety if we will tie those two together. And so, you know, all of this stuff where, you know, you've got the amateur built airplanes and the safety record that the FAA keeps talking about in the NPRM, it's kind of interesting because they keep referring back to the same thing, that the whole reason that the ELSA thing is being expanded is that it was pretty successful and our accident rates are lower. And so, you know.
Sure, and they're saying lower than the experimental amateur built aircraft, and that's what we're trying to address here, is let's get those amateur built accidents low as well.
I don't think we need to have that deficiency in the amateur built aircraft. Now, granted, the airplanes are not built to an ASTM standard, and a lot of them are, you know, different than what we would have in an ASTM category. Many of them are way better than, you know, a lot of the ASTM, you know, there's some real good builders.
Some of them are a mirror image of an ELSA.
Absolutely.
And so I really have always long thought that the owner of an amateur-built aircraft should be able to take the 2-day inspection course and get the certificate to do the inspection on his own amateur-built aircraft if it fits the light sport category.
Yeah, and so nobody more suited to do this than the owner. Many of the amateur-built airplanes, you know, just outside of the expertise of whatever A&P they have access to, you know, there's not enough A&Ps to go around right now. I mean, how often do we get guys calling wanting us to do stuff? I mean, it's just every single day, and we're too busy to do that. But and to be honest with you, I don't want to tie myself up with that stuff. I got other stuff to be doing. So this puts the responsibility for both the maintenance and the inspection right where it belongs, the guy that's signing these things off. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think we covered that.
And we covered that. So did we cover this also?
Yeah, you've been really ranting.
That's what I'm all for you. I don't know why you have to say stuff like that.
I'm just saying that you covered it all.
So we've got a proposal, though, and the proposal, basically, you want to talk about what we're talking about?
Well, I would like to see.
Yeah, we actually kind of have a different proposal, don't we? Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see the guys that have an amateur-built plane that fits the definition of light sport take the 2-day inspection course. And many times they're a mirror image. I just had a call from a gal today who has a RANS
S7?
Yeah, and it's no different than ours that was experimental light sport. This one happens to be amateur built. If somebody had checked a different box, she could take this class and be able to do her inspection. So I think the 2-day...
ours was brought in during the transition period,
exactly.
And hers was built after the fact, and so she didn't have any choices at that point, probably. So that's where the difference is. And so you're proposing that if it fits the definition of the light sport rule, they just take the same class that the existing ELSA guys are taking, and they get a certificate to be able to work on those.
I mean, I think that just makes sense. for me. If it were a larger plane, more complex, the expanded aircraft that they're allowing through MOSAIC, then I appreciate your plan for that.
Okay, so here's my plan. I think it should be a 32-hour course. And let me just for
the repairman with the maintenance rate, or the
repairman inspection,
amateur
built repairman inspection rating. And I'd like to get the guys in the class for a 16-hour airframe stuff, where we're talking about what rules and regulations and logbooks and the airframe stuff and all of the wheels and brakes and corrosion and all of that kind of stuff.
ELTs, all of that.
And the only reason that I'm wanting to do that is because I have so much information I would love to impart that I think that would be a good amount of time, because there's a lot of difference in these amateur built airplanes that are different than an ELSA that's built to a standard.
But they're true amateur built, and they're not, like, you could get an RV-12 and just, there's no difference between the two.
I'm on board, I got you. But then I'm also proposing that they get a 16-hour airframe rating and a 16-hour engine rating, kind of like an A&P, an A&P, an airframe and power plant rating, but we're just doing this at a lower level. And the reason that I wanted to do that was so that we would have to take an engine type specific class. So if you had a two-stroke engine, we get 2 solid days training you on two-stroke engines. Boy, we could make a huge impact on the safety of those things.
And the same person could come back and take a 16-hour 4-stroke, and then you'd have both ratings. Maybe you'd do the 4 days back to back, so somebody could do them back to back.
Yeah, and we think if they're fitting into this category of ELSA, why don't we let our LSRMs that are kind of trained to do this stuff specifically also be able to do?
I've long thought that they should, and they have always asked why they couldn't. They just doesn't make sense to them. They'll be in a hangar, and their neighbors have identical aircraft. One happens to be certified light sport, the other amateur built, and they can take care of one but not the other. And it's very frustrating even for the customers.
They're being trained very specific on these types of airplanes that we're talking about. We're not asking them to work on type certificated airplanes or stuff like that. And so my engine specific training would be specific to each of those engines that they have on that airplane. And so they would get like almost like a type rating for that engine. And then if they buy a different airplane, but it's got the same engine, they don't need another class. But if they now buy an engine and they've gone from, say, a Continental and they're now in a Rotax 912 IS or something more complex like that, then they would need an additional rating. This would all be FAA approved courses, so it would still have that onerous responsibility of making sure that it meets the minimum requirements.
So my argument is that the 2-day course is a license to learn. Our guys go out right now and take maybe the Rotax courses from the different Rotax. Even though we teach quite a bit of the Rotax information in the class for them, they'll still go out and take additional training. So for me, it's a license to learn. We give them the minimum, and then they can always do more. And they usually do, because they want the information. They'll go to a Jabiru class.
I'm willing to recommend a little additional training. If you gave me the choice of your program and the FAA saying no, or my program and them saying yes, which would you take?
Well, that's not my only choices. If they said yes to me, I would take mine. They say, and then we have to trust that people, I always am into less government control, less government regulation, and let's trust people to.
I agree, and many of them do go out and take additional training. But here's kind of my proposal. So one of the reasons for the specific training is it would do something that the one-off weirdo engines that are out there, you wouldn't be able to do this for. You'd still be stuck under your same program. But if you're doing one of those airplanes with a one-off engine on the thing, you probably get a repairman certificate anyway, because you're the one that probably built that thing. And so that's not a big burden on them.
No.
It would also push the manufacturers of the engines and the airplanes to use more of the traditional engines that have that really high reliability. the Rotax Continental Lycoming Jabiru group, you know, and it would push more of them that way. And we already have every single one of these. You know, Lockwood and Ronnie Smith and Morris down there, they're doing training all the time on these Rotax engines. It'd probably be just a little bit of work and they'd get an FAA approval to be able to do those specific courses. Continental Lycoming already have training programs. Jabiru already has a training program. All of those providers could now be part of that solution of getting more of that training out there. We don't need to do everything in the whole world. We're plenty busy with what we're doing. But I think this makes sense. And then, you know, when there isn't any reason. I think if you ask anyone that had an amateur built airplane, if he was willing to put the time in for these 4 days of class or still have to take it to an A&P, I think hands down they would run to that.
Sure, I'm
4
sure they
days
would.
worth of training. So
I'm sure they would.
I'm just trying to solve that problem, you know, and you know, we're talking about pretty much solving a whole bunch of these problems. We're talking about putting the incentive in the right spot. We're controlling the costs. The costs are getting out of control. These $300,000 airplanes are ridiculous, you know. And the amateur built groups, the whole reason behind the EAA and this amateur built airplane right from the very beginning when Paul set this thing up was, you know, we need to be able to get some, you know, some innovation and some control in these things and be able to build them ourselves. And, you know, that was kind of the whole point. And we don't want to go to, you just have to go buy something that's built by a manufacturer or you can't fly. That doesn't make any sense to me. And more training for the operators, the maintainers, the owners, you know, that's always ends up being good. And then it unburdens the A&P community. They'll stop calling and asking if they can get us to do something for them. And of course, safety, 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 safety. That's,
improve,
you know,
safety, certainly it would.
I think it kind of seems like it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting idea. I hope that we can get something in one proposal or the other to take and relieve this frustration for the amateur built pilots. Can't find anyone to do their annuals or just want the right to be able to do it themselves. You know, just like our other customers, they do a better job because they're more interested in taking their time and doing it right. I know that there's a huge, huge, you know, need out there for sure.
Yeah, I think it just makes total sense. We're not going to go through all the instructions for commenting like we did on the first video. There's no sense to cover all of that stuff, but we do want to mention, you know, that if we're going to make any impact at all, we've got to approach this from a really rational, you know, not just we want it, but, you know, this makes sense. And, you know, the FAA is always, you know, we love working with the FAA. Every group of FAA inspectors that we ever work with, you know, they always are, their goal is to try and make things safer. And if you can, you know, they'll bend over backwards to help if we can show some direction to make this thing safer. And I think this is right in line with that. I can't imagine them not being receptive to the whole concept. And
yeah, we're just going to hope, you know, and then comment, because it is a draft and our comments can help to change. So we have a big mailing list, but it's almost all of our 2-day guys that have taken the 2-day class, the ELSA guys, and the SLSA guys. I think we'll hit some amateur built people, but we certainly can use some help with that. So yeah, so the reason I'm pointing this out is you guys got to get this video out to all those other amateur built guys so that they can kind of get a handle on this and then help us comment like that. Because if we're going to move this forward, if we don't comment, nothing's going to happen at all. We really encourage you to comment on all of the 3 aspects that we're concerned about. The LSRM training is a huge issue. So please watch that video and comment on both issues as well, the LSRM as well as the amateur built. We're going to do a 3rd video, probably not until mid-September. We're going to get, we're meeting with EAA, we're meeting with ASTM committees. We're talking. Had a really nice meeting with EAA today, and we're talking to our supervisor, trying to get a handle on the changes as they occur. And tell them what you found out today. Yeah, it was really sobering. I was talking to him about the regulations to do the airman certification standards, And he said the way he reads it, he couldn't approve our program unless we met almost all of the A&P requirements, which would make it crazy long.
Well over a year-long program for the LSRM course.
The way that it's worded today. So it's super important that we all comment.
Go read that, go watch that video on the LSRM part of this as well, because we need a bunch of help on this. That one, I think that's the biggest miss out of everything that's showing up in MOSAIC. Yeah.
And so it's rainbowaviation.com. On the home page it says MOSAIC.
And I'll put a link to the videos, the other videos down in the bottom of this, and then a link over to your blog post about how to do the comment and all of that kind of stuff, so you can get to that there. And I'll put those links in the bottom of this also once we're finished that. But
yeah, we appreciate you guys listening, and we'll look forward to catching you up next month. And so it's Carol and Brian Carpenter, Rainbow Aviation, and rainbowaviation.com.
Good job. Now let's see if it worked.
You better have pushed record.